Welcome, action fans, and thanks for joining us for another edition of All 90s Action, All the Time, as we continue our 90s Stallone journey. I'm one of your hosts, Scott Murphy, and on today's episode, we are going to be talking about 1992's Stop or My Mum Will Shoot. I said it like that because there's an exclamation mark after the stop, so you know you're watching a wacky movie. Anyway, who do I mean by we? Well, of course, I mean none other than screenwriter, podcaster, and a man who seems to reliably turn up for all the worst movies on offer, Mr. Craig Draheim.
I'm just paying my dues, Scott.
Now, before we get into the movie, and before I get into the regular movie details that I give you, a quick catch-up of what Stallone was doing at this time. So in between making Rocky V and making this movie, he made Oscar, which was a John Landis movie, and his first kind of proper stab at straight-ahead comedy, which did not go well as it was critically slain and, worse, made only $23.5 million off of a $35 million budget. So, at this point, having had the failure of Rocky V and the failure of Oscar, and the year before that, in 1989, also having the failure of Walk Up. So, like, Tango and Cash has been the only bright spot of the few years run of this kind of career slump he seems to be having at the time. He was obviously looking for a big hit, which he did not get with this film. So Stop or My Mum Will Shoot came out in February 21st, 1992, and was directed by Roger Spottiswoode, who's probably most famous for directing Turner and Hooch and the Bond movie Tomorrow Never Dies, although horror fans might also know him as the director of Terror Train. And the movie was written by Blake Snyder, whose only other feature film credit is a terrible 90s comedy called Blank Check. I know because I watched it when I was a kid. But apparently he was some sort of like screenwriting guru and wrote a book on screenwriting that was called Save the Cat, the last screenwriting book you'll ever need. So there you go. And unfortunately, he sadly died in 2009, aged 51. There's a couple of other credited writers on the script, a William Osborne and a William Davies, who were obviously a screenwriting partnership, who, as well as working on this film together, also co-wrote Twins, and also co-wrote the Kim Basinger, Val Kilmer action comedy The Real McCoy, which we will be covering at some point, and a bunch of other movies that you've probably never heard of. Individually, Osborne's most notable credit is The Scorpion King, and Davies' most notable credit is How to Train Your Dragon. So that a kind of bright spot on his filmography there. He also wrote the Johnny English trilogy, so his sense of comedy is. Anyway, we'll get into it. So review-wise, this currently sits at a 4.3 out of 10 on IMDb, which is the season low. Like, there will not be an IMDb score lower than this the rest of the season. And also, it is the second lowest IMDb score of any film we've covered so far. The only film that has a lower IMDb score is The Patriot, with a score of 4.2. And this movie actually has a connection to The Patriot, which we'll tell you about soon. It also has 11% on Rotten Tomatoes based on 28 reviews, and a 1.9 on Letterboxd, which is actually the lowest of any film we've covered because The Patriot had a 2.0. It also won 3 Razzies: Worst Actor for Sylvester Stallone, Worst Supporting Actress for Estelle Getty, and Worst Screenplay for the aforementioned Snyder, Osborne, and Davies. And while not a box office disaster, it made $70.6 million off a $45 million budget, which is not exactly setting the heather on fire either. So, Craig, had you seen Stop or My Mum Will Shoot before?
No, actually, this was my first watch. I mean, I've heard about it for many, many years, but I don't know, I was never, even as a kid, I really enjoyed Turner and Hooch, but I was never like a big, grizzly cop or super cop pairs up with, again, dog, cat, or dog, child, parent, whatever it may be. So I always avoided most of these movies, except, Turner and Hooch, until I watched it for this podcast.
Okay. I also enjoyed Turner and Hooch when I was young. I think I watched a few of these movies, actually, because, I mean, I was definitely, I definitely, I'm a big fan of Kindergarten Cop. I enjoyed that as a kid. I was not watching it well, but I remember rewatching it as an adult and still kind of enjoying it. It's not an amazing movie, but it's a solidly entertaining film, I think. Yeah. And Turner and Hooch, also a solidly entertaining film. And then, there's various other ones that are terrible, obviously. But yes, I did actually watch this more than once as a kid. I feel like I watched this twice. Okay. And I must have liked it the first time enough to watch it a second time, I suppose. But I don't have before rewatching it today, I didn't have a clear memory of this movie at all, which is because, partly because the last time I saw this movie must be at least 25 years ago. But my memory as a kid is I certainly didn't love it. I don't have any particular affection for it, but I don't remember despising it either. So that's my relationship to the movie before rewatching it today.
It's just kind of very generic, I would say. I don't know, in all of its approach to, if you've seen one of those movies, this is a paint by numbers in terms of the plot, I would say.
Yes, yeah. It is highly. It's highly forgettable. It's very by numbers. We'll talk about it more, obviously, but it's very by numbers in nearly every way. Although I must say, doing some background research into the movie, Stallone's relationship with this film is very funny, and some of the things he has said about this movie over the years also very funny. So when he was asked in a Q&A for Ain't It Cool News about movies he wished he had not done, this was the first movie he mentioned. Other movies he mentioned included Oscar, Get Carter, Driven, Detox, and Rhinestone. And I would actually say, as much as this is a terrible movie, that probably Get Carter and Driven and Detox are worse movies. I've definitely hated them more. And as much as I think this is a terrible film, I cannot say necessarily that I hate it because, like you say, it's so deadeningly generic that it's hard to work up any sort of true frothing hate.
Yeah, and that's what we were talking about before we started recording too, of this versus Rocky V. I think both of us, we were feeling the same way, where Rocky V, it's like was more frustrating because there's so much, I'd say, there's wasted potential of a good movie is in there, where with this one, it's it is what it is.
It is what it is. It just sits there. Although, like I said, he's got some funny quotes in it, because it's obviously something that has, haunted him in a way. This is one of his quotes on it. Maybe one of the worst films in the entire solar system, including alien productions we've never seen. A flatworm could write a better script. In some countries, China, I believe, running the movie once a week on government television has lowered the birth rate to 0. If they ran it twice a week, I believe in 20 years, China would be extinct. Another great quote from him is, I made some truly awful movies. Stop or My Mum Will Shoot was the worst. If you ever want someone to confess to murder, just make him or her sit through the film. They will confess to anything after 15 minutes. So there we go. I think obviously he got burnt big time by this movie, and it annoys him. I think it also annoys him because both Stallone and Schwarzenegger have confirmed that Schwarzenegger read the script, thought it was terrible, but because they were in competition at the time, made his agent put out feelers to say that he was interested in the script, which got on the attention of Stallone's agent, who passed it on that Schwarzenegger was interested in it. So basically, Arnie tricked him into making this movie.
Yeah. Yeah, I read up on that. And I know they just kind of confirmed it again. There was some video with Schwarzenegger and Stallone. On their Instagrams or something like that.
Yeah, they did like a kind of Q&A Instagram lockdown Instagram Q&A.
Yeah.
Just like last year or something, just not that long ago. So yeah. The other thing in that kind of Instagram thing was that Stallone had said that apparently in the initial concept of the script, that it was going to be more of a black comedy, like Throw Mama from the Train.
Yeah.
And the Estelle Getty character was going to be more hateful, more annoying. Yeah. Just a much more unlikable character.
Okay. That makes, I guess, sense because of, with her work on the Golden Girls, as Sophia, right? And, I don't know, when I was looking stuff up for it, I remember, it's classified as a black comedy. There's really no that I could see black comedy, but I guess, really talking about it more, there's elements where I guess there could be pushed further, but. Yeah.
Well, obviously, maybe, I don't know. Like, I don't know what the initial spec script was like. As we kind of discussed off air, the spec script for this film caused a studio bidding war. And if you've seen this picture, you'll be genuinely amazed by that. And the script went for $500,000, $500,000. Amazing.
Yeah. And that was because, again, we talked about this but it's one of those movies where, there's so many you watch and you're like, well, maybe the initial script was great. And then it went through the filters of the producers or the editors or actors, filmmakers, whatever it may be. And it turned out to this. That happens so many times where this just feels like from the beginning, the script was problematic.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So shall we get into it?
Let's do it.
Okay, so the movie opens so that we know it's wacky and zany with some fun animated credits, kind of Pink Panther style. So the stop appears on the big stop sign, and then a little cartoon Estelle Getty comes and looks through the two O's in shoot. And and that's kind of, so we know we're in wacky territory. We also know we're in wacky territory because of the incredibly generic early 90s cop film music that is playing. And it's got a little bit of kind of panpipes and stuff. So it's kind of like quirky, it's not Alan Silvestri's best work. It has to be said. It's like everything else in this film, it feels very lazy.
And it's on repeat. So throughout the whole movie, it
is on repeat throughout the movie. Yeah, like the music is, we'll talk more about the music actually later, because there is other generic moments of music that I was just like, oh God, just so on the nose. Yeah. Like, far be it from me to question Alan Silvestri, the man behind the Avengers theme and the Back to the Future theme, and he's composed all sorts of great stuff, so just not his finest work, not even close to his finest work. Anyway, tell us what happens in the opening scene, Greg.
Well, we get the whole looking at the city at night type of thing that comes with all of those crime cop, buddy cop movie, or most crime movies during that time. We get to see all the lights, and then we come to Sylvester Stallone sitting in his car, just waiting. His feet are on the dashboard, and he's talking to his partner at the time too, and they're basically waiting for the seller, because they're going to be the buyer in a kind of an undercover sting operation. And they're talking about how these guys are being rude because they're late, until finally they show up. Stallone then goes to, I guess, go with the operation to sell it. Ving Rhames, who I don't even know if he's credited or not. He only has
He is credited as Dr. Stereo.
Okay.
It's not mentioned. His name is not mentioned in the movie, but he is credited.
Okay. He says this guy might be a cop, to which then Stallone basically says, well, you're keeping me away from the Lakers game. You show up late and you want to think I'm a cop. And then then he punches him out. And then a whole shootout happens where his partner gets shot in the butt, but they catch the bad guys.
Well, he has a shard of glass.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
In his butt.
Yeah.
So the kind of, what's kind of supposed to be kind of wisecracking one-liners is what's supposed to be comedy. Like, it's supposed to be comedy in the car where he's moaning about them being late. Kind of like, this doesn't really land. Feels a bit lame. And then one of the main issues with the film is that all the punchlines you can see coming a million miles off. Like, you can, sometimes there's like, you see the punchline, you could fall asleep for 5 minutes, wake up, and the punchline has still not happened yet. And then it happens, and you're like, oh, that's incredibly disappointing.
Yeah.
Because like, it's so, when his partner comes over to him and he thinks he's been shot in the leg, and you just know that he's either been shot in the ass or he has some sort of shrapnel in his butt or it's just going to be, that's going to be the joke. Like, it's going to be in his ass, not his leg. And that's going to be hilarious. It's just, and all, like, so many of the gags, like nearly all of the gags are like that.
Yeah. It plays like they're trying with the partner, who then he pops up a couple more times, but not to really help or anything. But it plays like they were like, oh, well, we watched Lethal Whip, or Shane Black movie. Let's try and have them have that dynamic that, all of these movies had during that time. But
that is very true. Yeah. Like, so he is, like, Tony is the partner's name. He's played by an actor called John Wesley, who sadly died in 2019, age 72. But he's playing kind of the Danny Glover character. But like you say, he only actually appears in like 3 or 4 scenes. Yeah. Like, with any significance. And they don't really build that relationship much at all. But then that's kind of the film's go-to, just ineptitude.
Yeah. Well, even we'll get into it, but you almost feel, so we were talking about this before, but one of my main things that I've realized has been recurring is, watching these movies, I'll bring up, oh, well, going this route, you could have made a better movie, or there's some great movie in there, where this one, obviously it is what it is, even at its best, but you almost feel like if you're going to go that way, the way they do with, these cops being kind of so over the top, or certain things like that, you could just make all of the characters very heightened, except Stallone, and him be like the straight man. And I don't know. It feels like if you're going to go that route, then just go for it.
Yeah. Yeah. But then, that's certainly an idea. You would still need better gags.
Yeah.
With better comic timing.
Yeah.
This movie has no sense of comic timing whatsoever.
Yeah. There's only probably one scene that I think might have got us. There was like the shake your head smile, not because it was funny, but like, out of embarrassment or whatever it may be that I was feeling watching this.
That's a fair point. Yeah. There is like, there's at least one other kind of the moment that, like, it would be an exaggeration to say I laughed, but I kind of smiled at just partly the way the actor read the line. But we'll get to that. We'll get to that later.
Yeah.
But anyway, we move on with the film and we go back to the precinct, where it turns out
He's at the bar first, isn't he? Where he's
Oh, right. Yeah. We have that scene. Yes, that is
which is
true.
very quick.
Then we have a very, very quick scene where he's in the bar drinking some pints, trying to phone his mother.
Yeah, and he's counting how many times it's ringing. So it's
yes.
like he's in the 70s or something like that by that point.
Yeah, for sure. And then after that, he goes to the precinct, where it turns out he's, because it's that kind of movie, he's dating the female lieutenant, who is played by Jo Beth Williams, who you probably most know for her role in Poltergeist. I imagine, listeners, you might know her for something else.
Yeah.
But
and
that's like her most famous role anyway. Yeah, go ahead, Craig.
Oh, no. And she plays it in a way that's supposed to be opposite of where normally it's like the lieutenant is the tough, like always yelling at people, and she's just like it. Maybe to play on that, they make her where she's way more vulnerable, and she's like trying to be the professional lieutenant, but she's also in love, but upset that he was at a bar all night on the phone trying to call a woman, but she's not going to believe it was his mother. And so she just basically is very fragile despite being the lieutenant. That's how they portray her.
That is true. And at this point, he kind of portrays him like... It's weird because we've had this opening scene where he's kind of portrayed as stereotypical super cop who can do everything himself. To get the kind of bad guys, he like shoots down a sign, and that gets that whole gang. Like he's done it himself, and then he's off to sink a few pints with the guys. But then in this scene, he's kind of just portrayed as like a bit of an idiot. Like the way like when you're having that conversation, him and the lieutenant, about their relationship, and she's trying to say like, oh, like remember that stuff we said in the cabin, and and they do this whole gag where it's like, oh, that thing, no, not that thing, and like and then, oh, this thing, no, not that thing, and then she's like, you remember the conversation, and he's like, oh, the feeling stuff. Yeah, it's like what? I like in a way, I don't know. Like I'll talk about it more about the kind of different aspects that I think like this character is kind of wrong for Stallone. It kind of. Sometimes it kind of reads as like it should be like a younger character, because Stallone would have been like he would have been mid-40s when this movie came out. I think he would have been about 45 or something when this film was made. And yeah, so like it's like in some ways it feels like it should be like a kind of younger kind of macho dude or whatever. In other ways, we'll discuss the other ways later.
Yeah. Especially when the mom comes in.
Or especially when the mom comes in. Which is pretty much like she arrives in the movie just not long after that. Like there's another scene of him like trying to phone her and her not picking up and being like, grrr, which again I think is supposed to be funny, but just kind of sits there like so much.
Well, and they don't necessarily give the context for the phone calls until after so the whole joke of it is that every time she comes to visit, or when she's about to, he calls her and he says something along the lines of, oh, it's not a good time, so that she doesn't visit, or so that he gets out of it. But so she was ignoring the phone call to not have him tell her not to visit. But they don't tell us any of that. So then the joke, all we're really seeing is him on the phone being upset, counting the amount of times it's ringing, and that's it.
Yeah. So the joke's kind of told backwards in this case. Yeah, for sure. The other weird moment that I kind of clocked in the scene where he picks up his mom. So like his mom's like, the stereotypical overbearing, super embarrassing mom, shows everybody the baby photos, talks about intimate private details of his life with all and sundry. And so the people, are disembarking from the airplane, and they're all kind of pointing and laughing at Stallone's character, who's called Joe Bumkowski, Joe Bumkowski, as we should maybe point out.
Yeah.
And and then there's like when we first introduced to the mom, there's like all these air hostesses who are around them at the same time as well, and one of them goes like, "Oh, I thought you looked dead sexy in diapers," and I'm like,
Yeah.
"You're looking at baby photos. Like,
Yeah.
what? Somebody like just arrest her? I don't know. Like,
Well, too,
it's
there's so
creepy.
many.
No,
Yeah, there's so many comments made by all the air hostess. There's even some walking out before and stuff. Like, how many stewardess are on this flight? Like, I don't know. Everybody just seems to work with the airline, and even the pilots are around there. And
yeah, that's true because there's like a kind of first tranche of air stewardesses, and there's maybe like half a dozen air stewardesses that come off the plane, and then there's like another half a dozen air stewardesses who come off the plane with the mum, and you're like, yeah, you're right. That is a lot. Like, how big's this plane? Like, is it a super posh flight? Like,
I don't know. A trip from Jersey to LA is like 5 hours or 6 hours. It can't be that bad.
Yeah, I mean, like, I've flown from Edinburgh to Wellington, New Zealand, an international flight, and I don't think there was that many air stewardesses on the Emirates plane we were on. So yeah, I can't imagine on an internal flight across the States that there'd be like a dozen air stewardesses.
Yeah, but they have to show, apparently, make them feel even more insecure when a bunch of good-looking women, I guess, are ridiculing him. That's the joke.
Yeah, and some guy who looks like a kind of sleazy second-hand car salesman is like, oh, I also wet the bed, so it's just a kind of parade of humiliation, which again, the movie thinks is really funny, and it's not. Yes. Listeners, this is going to be most of the episode where we talk about the comedic deficiencies of this apparent comedy.
Yeah, and it can't be saved. Like,
it's unrescuable.
Yeah. So after that, is that when he just takes her home? Because is that when he takes her home to?
Well, so
never mind. I know what's coming up.
No, we've got to. No, so there is a scene where they're driving away from the airport, and then we have this conversation where, like, again, it's supposed to be hilarious that Estelle Getty, who's playing is the mother character, Tootie, she is like, oh, do you want me to drive? And he's like, no, I've been driving for 20 years, and again, this is a man in his mid-40s. And I suppose that's the joke, that it's like, he's treating a man like in their mid-40s as if he's like a kid or whatever, that's hilarious. And then he nearly crashes the car, and he shouts at a trucker, and then he, across the radio, he gets a call of a potential suicide. And so they drive to the scene of this potential jumper, and then we get the kind of, again, utterly generic for this type of movie, going on the ledge of a window trying to talk down a potential jumper. And do you want to tell us about the rest of this scene, how it goes down, Craig?
So he tells his mother to wait there, Tootie, and he goes up the flights of stairs, finally gets there, goes on the ledge, and Tootie finds out from the police officer with the kind of megaphone blowhorn thing that the potential jumper was having issues with his mother. So obviously they're going to hand her the megaphone. And so as he's up there trying to get the kid down, she starts talking, making him embarrassed, to the point that the kid realizes that, well, maybe the issues he had with his mother aren't so bad. And he just says, I'm going to go inside, leaving Joe there to be yelling at his mother and saying, why are you, and just so embarrassed, and why are you doing this? And the news cameras are still filming it, thinking that now he's the potential jumper who's dealing with his mother. Yeah. He's just so upset. And even the kid tells the police officers, you need to really help that guy.
Yeah.
He's got some problems or something. I don't know.
He's got some problems.
Yeah.
And again, it's one of those things of, you just, again, it's hard to kind of truly hate this movie, but the thing about it is just the repeated predictableness of it. Of, like, you're just kind of nodding your head going, of course he has mother issues. Oh, Of course they gave her the bullhorn. Oh, of course she is showing people pictures in this scene. It's just like, oh, I saw this all coming,
Yeah. Oh, of course you need a bunch of, because it's not just that, the crowd happens to be filled with a bunch of, again, attractive women who are now looking at these pictures and making a little comment or something to play more with his, masculinity or whatever it may be.
Now he takes her back to the house.
Yes, which is a pigsty, is what she basically refers to it as, even though it's this nice looking, two-story house in, a suburb of Los Angeles area, and it looks fairly clean with the exception of there being some junk in the closet, like files and stuff like that.
Yeah, he's got all this kind of, he's built up all this junk. He's crammed it into a closet that's like overflowing. As soon as you open up the closet, it's like kind of dropping out with stuff. But like, yeah, I mean, in my notes, I put like, house looks all right to me. Like, It's a bit, it doesn't have any of the kind of classic Hollywood, like this house is a pigsty with like pizza boxes lying around and like dishes stacked up in the stink and all this kind of stuff. No, the house looks totally clean. It's a little messy in that there's like a few magazines lying around and stuff like that, but it's like fine, and it's not even like, it's treated in the film as if like it is a pigsty. And then it's also treated in the film as if it's like a shithole. Yeah. And like, it's not like he, if the movie wanted to portray it that way, fine. But at least give him like an apartment, like in downtown LA. Don't give him like a house in the suburbs, a two-story house, nice two-story house in the suburbs, and then treat it as if we're supposed to see this as some sort of roach-infested apartment.
Well, and then they even, I don't know, it goes with that same thing in, if anybody's listening has watched it or listened to it, our Glimmerman episode with Keenan Wayans, where like he had the crappy apartment and it was like this nice luxury loft, basically, type of thing.
I mean, like, that's the thing as well. I was thinking about that when I was watching this, and I was like, yeah, this place is like even nicer than that place.
Yeah.
and that was way too classy to be being called a shithole, because like, again, it was this kind of loft apartment and studio loft apartment in LA, and you're like, no, it's like, like definitely seen much worse places in real life. I've lived in much smaller places.
Exactly.
I know, like some of these Hollywood people, man, they just have literally no idea how normal people live at all.
Yeah.
It's funny as well, because as you grow older, you become more aware of, kind of the value of properties and stuff, and you're just like, you watch movies you watched as a kid, and you just like, you're constantly thinking, how do these people afford this sort of, like you can, like rewatch something like Home Alone.
Yeah.
You're like, how does this apparently blue collar family afford this mansion that they seem to have? Like,
no, it's that. Yeah. And on top of that, he's like able to take all of his family to Paris or on all these like first class trips and stuff like that.
Yes. The economics of Home Alone really don't. I mean, it's not the only film, but it really doesn't work.
Yeah, so many of those comedies during that time, I think, were because Parenthood with Steve Martin. There's a ton of them.
Oh yeah,
like you see those huge, those 2-story, where it's got to be like 5-bedroom, whatever it may be, type of houses, and it's like, oh, it's just the three of us, and I'm struggling at my job, and barely making ends meet, but we live in this house, and
apparently make the mortgage payments every month. So like. It's miraculous. But anyway, I suppose back onto this. So we get more hilarity because Tootie has brought a whole suitcase full of pineapple chunks, dull pineapple chunks, which apparently are better in New Jersey than they are in California. Which
that's the joke.
That's the joke. That's the whole joke. Yep. The pineapple chunks better in New Jersey.
And she brings cleaning supplies because, again, cleaning supplies are better in New Jersey, or she doesn't think her son would have bleach or Windex or whatever it may be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I did want to mention this as well. So, because apparently this house is a pigsty, even though we've clarified it's not. So she's hoovering in the middle of the night, and it's like driving him crazy. Like he can't get to sleep because she's hoovering. And he says, like, oh, please God, make her stop. And she stops. And then he's like, thank you, God. And then he goes back to sleep. And then you could probably count it on your own fingers in terms of like, you just know she's going to start again. Like I basically counted it down like 3, 2, 1. All right. Yeah. That's it. She started hoovering again. That's just, I mean, it's so symptomatic of the whole movie.
Yeah. And then it gets to the best part of her cleaning, because apparently she's not only a mother who just treats her son like a child, she's not obsessed with cleaning, but she also, even acknowledging that she later on that she comes from lived in a bad area in New Jersey, she doesn't understand how guns work. So that she starts cleaning his gun because it looks dirty and has grease on it.
Yeah, so this is probably one of the other issues with the movie as well, where the character of Turi is sometimes shown to be a genius and so wise, and then other times is shown to be a complete and utter idiot.
Yeah. Well, and it feels like because I know she was in Golden Girl, or it would have been after Golden Girl. I don't know. But it seems like they light her kind of wisecracking character in that, like, oh, we want that actress to do that role, but then decide to make it, instead of wisecracking and, I guess knowing the streets or street smart or whatever it may be, they decide to make it more, over the top motherly and annoyance.
Because she does play a very similar character in this to what she plays in the Golden Girls. But then in the Golden Girls, she had much better scripts, I suppose. So it's a much better character.
Yeah. And I know there was a ton of kind of reviews that I read on the movie before we started recording, and that was a lot. They always referenced the Golden Girls and how this script would not have passed through, and how the character it couldn't even live up to being 30-minute episode of a Golden Girls.
Yeah. I read that as well. Also, for your information and for everybody listening at home, the Golden Girls ran until May the 9th, 1992, so it ended in the same year as this came out.
And then I know there was a bunch of spin-offs or something, but as I went down my Google rabbit hole of looking at everything, I know there's a ton of Golden Girls spin-offs that she would appear in or stuff like that, but that is not the important thing that we're talking about.
No, it's super important. We have to talk about or my mom will shoot. Which is how you have to say it. Yeah.
But she decides to, I guess, clean the gun and point it at her face before, unloading the clip, and wash the bullets, but not just like clean it in a normal sense of how people clean their weapons, but in the sense of like how you would dishes.
Yes, with bleach and stuff. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she
ruins it.
So of course the gun is completely unworkable now. And we get a kind of one of the kind of semi smiles of the film. We get a kind of half-hearted Dirty Harry gag before Stallone sees the gun and is horrified to see that what she's done to it, and explains that this would now be completely useless and probably explode in his hand.
And the gun that was black, it's now silver. So she's completely decimated it, I guess.
Yep. And then, okay.
Oh, no, I was going to say, but then he doesn't even react that much by the fact that his mom is pointing a gun at him and making the Dirty Harry joke. He just kind of looks, he's like, oh, give it over here or whatever, like a groan. I don't know. Even if it
Yeah,
was a joke, I'd be I woke up to my mother pointing what I would think was my loaded gun at me. I'd say,
I'd
whoa.
react. I'd react
Yeah.
more as well. But I mean, I do feel like Stallone obviously realized pretty quickly that this was a bad movie
Yeah.
because, like, he gives one of his most dialed-in, disinterested, sleepwalking performances of his career.
Yeah.
And I could kind of tell that he had like no enthusiasm. Like as kind of my background research and trying to look up kind of interviews from the time and stuff like that, I caught an interview on YouTube of Stallone who was on the Letterman show, and presumably he was there to promote the movie. And it's like a 9-minute interview section, and they talk about the movie for about 2 seconds. Like, basically, Letterman shows a clip of the movie that's the clip of the potential jumper thing, and Letterman goes like, "Oh, it looks like it could be fun." And like Stallone looks at his hands and kind of says like, "Yeah, no, it's it's not going to." This is what he says: "It's not going to cure any ailments, but it's not bad." And then they just move on to talking about other things. So you can tell that he had zero enthusiasm for this movie, even at the time when he's supposed to be doing the kind of, because lots of actors star in bad movies and they give the kind of bullshit lip service at the time and then go, years later being like, yeah, that was one of the biggest pieces of shit that I've starred in. So he couldn't even work up the effort to kind of give the bullshit lip service at the time, or very half-heartedly anyway.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I have to watch it now.
Yeah. I just looked up because I was trying to look up Stop or My Mom Shoot behind the scenes or whatever, but then I typed in Stallone interview 1992. It was the only one I could find of him talking about the movie. Well, for all of 2 seconds anyway.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, let's get on to the comedic gold that Trudy giving Joe an insanely large breakfast.
Yeah, because breakfast is the most important meal of the day. And don't worry, they will bring that up a couple times throughout because of, comedy sake. But what is it? It's bacon, sausage, orange juice, milk, pancakes, sweet rolls,
bran muffin things, grapefruits, cocoa puffs, toast, scrambled eggs, sausages, bacon, and that's just the joke that it's loads of stuff, and that breakfast is the most important meal of the day.
And then he is with his partner, again, one of the few times the partner plays any importance, who's just eating, it looks like a breakfast bagel or whatever, and asks if he's hungry, to which then the joke is repeated and him describing everything he ate. And then his partner says, well, I guess breakfast is the most important meal of the day.
Yeah. And I'm laughing now because of how bad it all is and how it's not funny. But
when you're watching it, you don't.
When you're watching it, you don't. You're just like, oh, okay, they're going to tell you that breakfast is the most important meal of the day again. Okay, they did. Yeah, okay. But in between the insanely massive breakfast and that scene, there is fun, wacky times with Estelle Getty because she feels very guilty about ruining her son's gun. So she goes off to try and get him a replacement gun. And she goes to a reputable gun store where we actually get a cameo from Richard Schiff in kind of pre-West Wing times, which is interesting as well because in the movie that we covered, Rapid Fire, which also came out in 1992, we also had a cameo from Richard Schiff. So this is a second Richard Schiff cameo we've had on the show.
He's done a lot of, I realized that, I guess after watching that, of him doing a lot of cameos over the years.
He just plays the gun clerk.
Yeah.
For listeners who have not seen the movie, that's all he does, and he just shows Estelle Getty a couple of guns, and then
says you need to wait 2 weeks because of processing
cooling off period.
Yeah, but she can't wait 2 weeks. She needs to get the gun for her son now.
That is correct. So the big biker Mitchell tells her, who's played by so many. It's quite sad. So many of the people in this movie have since passed away. Like, so the actor who played Mitchell, who plays Mitchell, is Dennis Berkeley, and he passed away in 2013, age 67. So I got quite down about the fact that it's so many. I mean, some of them are obviously older. I mean, obviously Estelle Getty is no longer with us. She passed away in 2008, but she was decent aged, 84.
Which I know they were talking about by the end of the series. She had dementia or something, right? Or that's a whole nother topic.
That's all I'm saying.
That she was kind of battling for a long time.
Yeah, right. Okay. It's a shame. A terrible, truly terrible disease. But I don't. It's not easy to transition from that.
Yeah. Back to
back to what's happening. Yeah, Craig, tell us what's happening.
So the biker Mitchell, he says that he can get her a gun quickly, to which she follows to his van, and it's obviously, he's selling illegal guns, and apparently, even though she knows what it's like living in bad areas in Jersey, she doesn't know, but then it's insinuate, I don't know, it's played off later on that maybe she does know that they're illegal, because I don't know.
Yeah.
Either way, she's buying an illegal gun, and they're trying to sell her, big AK-47s or stuff like that. And she says no, she needs something small, to which they finally get her to buy a MAC-10, which is like a
machine gun.
And they want 500. She says 350, and she gets them down to 350 because, nobody else is going to buy it if they want 500. I guess the deal goes through. But yeah, that's the point where it seems like she, again, has that street smart where she knows what's going on, but then she's still buying, a MAC-10, which is a legal weapon anyways.
She has the street smarts to haggle with gun dealers, but she doesn't have the smarts to not buy a machine gun from the back of a van.
Yeah. And during that time, they are being looked over by two men in suits who you don't know their names yet or what their purpose is, but they're ready to plan their hit, I guess, on the gun dealers.
That is true. And we later find out that their names are, these two dumb henchmen are Polly, played by Martin Ferrero, and Monroe, played by Gaylord Sertain, which is our Patriot connection.
Yeah. There we go.
So there we go. And these characters, like most of the characters, are given nothing to do. Polly has no character traits, discernible character traits. Oh, no, that's not fair. Like, they're two dumb henchmen and doing the kind of classic classic comedy double act thing. Monroe is the dumb henchman who knows he's dumb, and Polly is the dumb henchman who thinks he's the clever one.
Yep. And Monroe is sick too. That's like another.
Monroe's his only character trait is he has allergies and he sneezes a lot.
It doesn't really play importance. They recognize the sneeze at one point, but that's it.
Yeah.
Later on, but besides that, it plays no. It's just like a character quirk, I guess, to make it funny.
Yeah, and so at this point in my notes, I've put plot starts 26 minutes into film, because this is what kind of kicks off what is kind of the plot of the film, of she witnesses this murder, it sets off a chain of events, they have to stop the bad guys. But we've just, up until this point, we've watched a series of not very funny, disconnected sketches And it seems at this point the story has arrived.
Yeah, it's something that it would play, I guess, going by that like 3-act structure or whatever, it would play at the 15-minute mark. And then them pairing up as a team, Joe and his mother, would then happen at this point, like around 30 minutes. But that's not what we get.
It's not what we get.
And then she goes to the precinct, I'm assuming, after that. Or
Yes. And again, it's weird. It's, in terms of like, now I know this is like, we're constantly told by the music and stuff that this is wacky, is zany, because like when Estelle Getty arrives at the airport, at the start of the movie when she's first introduced, is like the super sitcom-y music that plays, and it's like, oh, zany times, like that's what's happening. But like, you've got to, even in a kind of zany film, you've got to ground the characters in something. And just like Joe's nonplussed reaction of having his mum shove his gun in his face, like her reaction to witnessing a murder is also insane, because she just kind of shrugs it off and just goes, oh, it's a terrible world. These things happen. And then that's it. There's like no real kind of after effect at all. She's not really disturbed by it at all.
And that's what makes you think, like, back to, is she supposed to be this like sweet old naive mother, or this, I guess closer to her Golden Girls character of, this street smart kind of, cocky, I guess, mother.
Yeah.
But that's where they don't know what they want to do with her fully, or use her to her potential, I guess. And so she's giving all the detectives cookies, and more excited about showing them photos of him as well. To which the lieutenant then realizes that he was talking about his mother or was trying to get his mother on the phone, and that he wasn't cheating on her.
Yeah, and the case has been assigned to another detective, Ross, who we haven't mentioned. He's actually popped up a couple of times. Like the first time he pops up at the precinct, I just wrote in my notes, Ross is a dick.
Yeah. That's all. He's the dick cop. And that is his whole purpose of being kind of like either the tattletale or just being a jerk. But then as you watch him later on, and she's not giving him information to save for her son to make him look better. Like, well, I kind of understand where Ross is coming from now, because like he's doing his job, and this lady who said she saw the murder is like not helping him at all.
Yes. I mean, we'll kind of talk about that. We'll talk about that further in terms of like my sympathies towards Ross, even though he is like this sleazy shitbag character.
He is, yes.
And he is, and that's just his role in the movie. And he's played by an actor called J. Kenneth Campbell, who he seems to be one of those kind of actors that you probably know the face of and kind of go like, he always plays those kind of shitbag characters, but like you probably wouldn't know the name of, But we can discuss that character further in a bit.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about probably one of the most insane things in the movie. So like we have this confrontation with the mother. The mother reveals that she's not told Ross everything. Stallone goes off on her. They have this big argument about what his life is like in terms of his love life, in terms of his apparently shithole house, 2-story house in the suburbs in LA. What is going on? Anyway, so
that he likes his life and he's comfortable where he's at.
He likes his life. He likes being a sergeant in the police. He likes being single. He likes being a bachelor, like all that. He digs it. And then we get, do you want to talk about the most insane scene in the movie?
So this is the one that I was mentioning earlier. There's the moment where you kind of shake your head and smile, not laugh or anything, but just out of ridiculousness. You get a whole scene where there's a bank robbery and happening, and the people are shooting and the cops are everywhere, and he's running up behind the cars. Finally, one of the guys comes out and is spraying bullets. Cop the cops, but he's able to get him. And then his mother walks out of the bank, I guess, with light behind her. And she's kind of in more of a, like, I guess, 50s housewife get up.
Yeah.
And then she's saying that he needs to get his diaper changed, which then he realizes that he's wearing a giant diaper because it's all a dream. And yeah, and that's it. That's the only other time that a dream occurs. So it just feels like really out of the blue and off. But you see Stallone do his like yell, and he's basically the whole time, and this is recurring throughout, he'd be like, "Mom."
Yeah.
And then, so he's doing this kind of whiny yell about not wanting to have his diaper changed.
That is true. And all in service of an insanely on-the-nose metaphor.
Yep.
Because you see, we just had a scene where he says he likes his life and he doesn't want to change, but it needs change. And, because like Gwen as well also says she can change, so the two women in his life. This is what we're dealing with, folks. Yeah, this is this script could not. I mean, how this script caused a studio bidding war? This script could not be any more on the nose if it tried.
Well, I know, what was it, before the writer's strike and everything, what was it, 08 or something? But that like studios just would buy scripts for like insane amounts and then hold on to them, even with the sake of not making them. There were a ton of writers who made a very well living and none of their work ever got produced. It would just be like they would sell their script to the studio, and the studio would be like, "Oh, well, we'll put this on the back burner in case we ever want it." So yeah, I don't know.
It seems that's. I mean, apart from his screenwriting kind of workshops, it seems like this guy Blake Snyder made quite a lot of money that way. Yeah. As well as his screenwriting workshops and the book he wrote about screenwriting.
Yeah, so this is, it's definitely one of those where it feels, I don't know.
I mean, this movie is not a recommendation for his book about screenwriting. It's got to be...
No, it's the opposite. It's like, did he even pay attention to his book?
Who knows? But we gotta keep on trucking with this one,
So he wakes up, and then even though he doesn't want it, his mother then sings him a lullaby to get him back to sleep. And it works, though.
Because of course it does.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe if this is the first movie you've ever seen, you might not see some of this coming. But like, if you've seen one movie, you've probably seen most of this stuff come.
Yeah.
Oh dear. But then we get more hilarity as Tootie gives Joe a present. And what's the present? Well, we've already spoiled it, but yeah.
It is the Mac 10. And he's all excited about it, even though he was upset with his mother. She says the thing about a present, and then he goes back into this childlike role that he keeps jumping in and out of.
Yeah.
Where he's all excited about the present. She gives him the Mac 10. And then he kind of starts connecting the pieces, I guess, because she also then acknowledges she knows the make and model of the car. She knows what the guys looked like, everything like that.
Yes, that's true. Like, in the kind of scenes that happen here, there's a couple of things I want to talk about, because like there's one when they go back to the station, and so Tootie shows Gwen some photos, and then possibly the only line that is delivered with any sort of like true emotion is when Tootie is talking about like the death of Joe's father, her husband, when Joe was 13 years old, and how he dealt with everything. He organized a funeral and, like did all this stuff, but like,
because she couldn't, or she
was too much of a wreck, and then, but she never saw him cry about it. And it's like the only moment in the movie that kind of rings with kind of true emotion, which then is immediately spoiled because when Joe comes into the room, they start doing this really forced crying, as if like that kind of fake crying, as if you're kind of pretending that you're crying.
Yeah.
And it's just like, and it's like, oh, okay. So that was the 2 seconds of real emotion we got in the movie, and now we're back to whatever this is.
Yeah. Yes.
And also, when you're talking about the fact that she suddenly remembers it, she's always remembered everything. She's just not told raw shit. And I've written down in my notes, suddenly she's got an eidetic memory, because not only does she remember the make of the van, the license plate of the van, the kind of, the guns she's got, and, that they were being sold off the back of the van. She also knows somehow the exact height and weight of the person they're looking for, of Mitchell. She says, oh, he must have been about 6'3", 320 pounds. Like, she knows, she has remembered everything.
Yeah. Talks about the tattoos he has. And what they say. Yeah.
So, yes, again, she's possibly a genius, or she's possibly insane, or she's possibly, just a, silly old woman. I don't know. Like, it's the none of the characters make much sense. They kind of flip-flop between various different things, I suppose. I suppose she's not the only character in the movie. It doesn't have any sort of logic to them.
Yeah. Could we pause for 1 second so I could just use the restroom?
So anyway, we move on. So they get a tip-off, so basically once she gives this exposition dump about, everything, the guy's whole biography, they go off to Mitchell's house, and Mitchell is not there, but some other people who we've met before are.
Yep, the Monroe and Polly, right?
Polly and Monroe is their names. They're not said often.
Yeah.
I think their names are only said once each, or maybe a couple of times each, but it's not really mentioned much. But they are definitely named in the movie.
Yeah, and they're holding Mitchell's girlfriend, hostage, and then just again, has a scene that will pop up many times, is that Joe tells his mother to stay put, or stay in the car, or just stay wherever, and she won't listen because, comedy purposes.
Wacky hijinks.
Yeah.
Those wacky hijinks.
Yeah. So he tells her to stay put, and then he goes up to the door, knocks on it. Nobody answers until he hears the scream, which he kicks down the door. He begins chasing the men downstairs. He jumps off, kind of jumps out the, I guess, balcony, onto the ground below, and chases after him. They get in their car and drive off, and then his mother, who is now in the driver's seat, pulls up, and so he jumps in because she's driving, and they're going to chase after him.
Yeah, and a car chase ensues, and it's kind of one of those things of like, if you've seen a car chase in an 80s or 90s action movie, you've seen this car chase. Obviously it has all the beats that you have to have at this time. So obviously they're driving on the sidewalk. Yeah. And obviously there's some people with some clothes, and they're driving under some scaffolding, and it's got all the things. It's got and much like the comedy, the action is very predictable, and it's all kind of, nobody is on their A game, is what we're saying, people. And it's kind of very lazily and flatly directed by Roger Spottiswoode, who would make much, who would direct much better action in like Tomorrow Never Dies, which I actually think is a slightly underrated Bond outing. But it's very lifelessly directed in this movie. Yeah,
everybody's collecting their paycheck.
It does very much feel like that. The jokes are lazy, the score is lazy, the direction is lazy, the performances are lazy. like it's weird as well because like a lot of the reviews of this movie that I've seen were like, talking about it as like this terrible, terrible movie. And like I said, this is the third time in my life that I've seen this. Crazy. But it's one of those things. I've seen much worse movies. It's not the worst movie I've ever seen. And it's not the worst film ever made. And I don't think it really deserves to be counted as one of the worst films ever made.
Yeah.
But it is absolutely one of the laziest, most predictable, most generic movies I've ever seen.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the major issue because even watching it just from the first time, and normally, you want to see something, or for a first time watch, even if it's bad, you get something. This was just kind of, I don't know, dozing off, or you just want to check your phone or your watch or whatever it may be, read a note card, read the back. Like, okay, I know what's going to happen in this scene, so I'm just going to, I don't know, look at the back of this pamphlet I got laying around right here or something.
That is true.
Yeah.
And this actually happens closer than I thought. Yeah, we get to talk about Ross again. Now, as we discussed 2 minutes ago, Ross is the shitbag character.
Yes.
You root against him. You've hissed and booed at the screen every time he's been on. He plays a sleazebag well. So, like, you do kind of hate this character. He's the one of the few characters in the movie who draws out some possible emotion in the viewer. But then, so this scene happens where the movie thinks it's hilarious to have Estelle Getty say asshole. She calls him an asshole. She says both her and Joe thinks he's an asshole. And that's a big laugh right there. And then we get a scene of Ross and Joe having this big argument, and then Joe snapping, and this is supposed to be like the big kind of like, yeah, fuck that bully. But so Joe, flushes his head down the toilet is what he does.
Yeah.
Like a kind of schoolyard bully. And then Ross complains to Lieutenant Gwen that basically Tootie has lied to him, has withheld information, withheld evidence, and that's bullshit. And also, he's just been attacked by Joe, and that's bullshit.
Yeah.
And he is told just to sit back down at his desk as there's a kind of little half smile on Gwen's face. And I suppose you're kind of, at this point, you're being like, oh, well, he's the shitbag character. He got his comeuppance. Yay. But it's played in such a way that even though, earlier on, like just a couple of scenes ago, I really wanted him to get his comeuppance.
Yeah.
And now I'm kind of like, well, that is workplace bullying. And I mean, he kind of has a point about Tootie too, like it seems kind of, I don't know, like,
is
maybe something should have been done.
And it's not like she's withholding evidence and like, she's making it very clear of like trying to misdirect him. It's not like, oh, I don't remember. It's
no, she's deliberately withholding evidence so she can give the evidence to her son so he can get the case.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then, but the movie doesn't care about this character. So, like, we don't see him again, I don't think. Like, I think that's a lot.
Yeah, you don't actually see, like, even the partner, Tony, I don't think you see him again until you see him in, like, the background in a scene at one point.
Yeah,
that's it.
That's pretty much it. That's he's done for in the movie, and like it is this weird thing because you're like, it's the one kind of thing where you're like, I do want this character to get his comeuppance, but then when he gets the comeuppance, you're like, this seems kind of mean.
Yeah,
it's just mean, and like I don't know, I feel kind of sorry for him now. It feels like even gets that wrong. But anyway, we're done with Ross. He's he's out of the picture now. But so again, like nothing's really set up particularly well. So like we have seen up until this point, we have seen the kind of big bad villain of the movie, Parnell, who's played by Roger Rees, who I'm sorry to inform you is sadly died in 2015, age 71. And Roger Rees, again, nobody's on their A game here, and I want to point out Roger Rees, good British actor, and from my childhood, I most remember him for his role as the Sheriff of Rottingham in Robin Hood Men in Tights, but he was also in much classier pictures too.
Oh, I forgot he was that. Yeah. I knew I recognized him, and then I just didn't put two and two together. And this is when are we meeting them now
Well, this is kind of like Parnell's proper kind of introduction.
Yeah.
As Joe goes to, we basically, followed the evidence. The weapons have been traced back to this factory that burnt down, and it's incredibly obvious that he was trying to get insurance money and stuff like that. So yes. So this is the kind of first proper meeting between Parnell and he's not really been established as a character. He was just a guy on a phone.
Yeah.
And earlier on, and then it's like, oh, this is the main villain in the movie. We're properly introducing like halfway through the film.
Yeah. And he doesn't even ever seem like the big baddie, I guess, or pose that much of a threat. He's just kind of, I don't know. He's not really.
Yeah, I mean, he's not really threatening. He's a little bit slimy, but again, everybody feels like they're kind of on 50% speed in this movie,
Yeah.
It's just everybody's going through the motions.
Yeah.
Everybody's read the script.
Yeah.
They were like, oh, I suppose a check's a check,
Yeah. I would like to be on set to see the one like a production assistant, the one person who's actually really enthused to be there. Just like, man, this is gonna be the funniest movie. And they're just so excited.
Oh yeah. Just like one assistant camera operator or something. Just like, that's great. One day I'll look back on this and I can say I was part of the making of Stop or My Mum Will Shoot.
Yeah. They're cracking up at every take. They're just enjoying themselves so much.
Yeah, one of the movie's other tropes is like it just references better things. So we had the half-hearted dirty Harry gag, and Tootie in this scene says, "I'll be back," just because there was that kind of whole run of things where Schwarzenegger movies would reference Stallone movies would reference Schwarzenegger movies.
Yeah, and it even does overkill on it. So she says, "I'll be back." And then as they're walking out, he goes, "Well, we're cops. We're not or cops don't say that. Terminators say that," or something like that.
Yeah.
So it really makes sure that it's a joke. A Terminator.
Yeah, they really, like everything in the movie, they really kind of outline it and, really kind of point out to you in case you're an idiot and you might not have picked that reference up. Yeah. And so really, yeah, this actually I mentioned earlier on, much earlier, that there was a moment that made me smile, and this is the moment when basically, so Roger Rees, who is, he's on 50%. Like he's, as half-hearted as everybody else. But the way he says the line that he's talking to Polly and Monroe and saying how they fucked this whole thing up, and basically, and describing all the things that have gone wrong since this assassination that they did, this murder that they did, and all that. And he ends it by saying, and now I'm getting harassed by, now some cop's weird mother is threatening to spank me. And it's just the way he says that. I was like, that's quite funny.
Yeah.
Didn't make me laugh.
Oh, she said, no, because she ends up saying that he needs, or one of those mother things. I guess he needs a spanking.
Which, yeah, that didn't make me laugh at all. I was just like, why would you say that? I know
No,
she's supposed to be the overbearing mother character, but what the fuck?
Yeah. And then, so it's implied kind of during the scene that all these hits are being taken because he's trying to erase any potential evidence of the insurance scam that he was a part of.
Yeah.
And that's why, so they're going around and doing that. And then he also needs to erase the cop and so Joe and Tootie, but make it look like an accident. But he makes sure to give them the warehouse's address.
Yes, so they
because
can go
of
and investigate.
Plot reason. Moving the plot forward.
Because of yes, it's one of those things because the script says so.
Yeah.
And then, we get more of the things this movie loves to do. We go to the factory. Does Joe tell his mother not to get out the car? He does.
He even takes the locks. Or whatever.
Yes, indeed. He even takes the locks with him to lock her in the car. But does that stop her from creating more wacky hijinks? No, it does not.
Yeah, the answer
the answer is a big fat no, because of course it is. Also,
she contacts the department on the radio saying that she accidentally locked herself in the car, and because everybody loves her, they willingly
because of her famous cookies.
Yeah, they willingly just are like, oh, okay, yeah, sure, and we'll tell you how to get out.
Yeah, and then so again, because again, in case you're an idiot and you kind of don't know what's going on, and we get this once Joe comes out the car. We get this shot that just kind of focuses on the wrecking ball, just outside the factory. And you're like, okay, well, it's obviously lingering on that because that is going to be used in a minute. Is it used in a minute, Craig?
It is. When he sees his mother, because she comes in as he's kind of looking at all the burnt areas of the warehouse, then he tells her, they start hearing a rumbling, and then the wrecking ball starts smashing through. Not only that, and then shooting starts as well. But his mother also grabbed his gun from the glove box, which I guess kind of helps, but not really at all.
It does not help at all.
Yeah.
Because she doesn't manage to shoot shit. She's just firing away, completely shooting everything else around the guy she's trying to shoot at. But I've also written in my notes, 57 minutes, Stallone says the title.
Yep. And he does it looks like for a bit that he doesn't want to. Because she won't give him the gun for some reason. Mm-hmm. And so there's there's like this hesitation in it where he's like, stop, or my mom will shoot.
Do you think that's because he was like, I don't want to say that. That's really...
I feel like it was.
It just, do I have to... you know what? Sometimes, people saying that the movie title in the movie is a fun scene, but it's done in such a way here that it just seems real lame. And I think it's partly to do with that line, like you say, the line reading of Stallone is just really kind of clearly he's got to this line and being like, I suppose. Yeah, all right. Stop. Or my mom will shoot. Okay. Was that a good enough take? Yes, Sly. Yeah. That's great.
We can't afford spending any more film today, so let's just cut it.
I want to remind everybody from the top of the episode, this film had a $45 million budget.
But fortunately, they're able to catch one of the two henchmen.
Monroe. That's the memorably named, as you'll surely know, the memorable character that is Monroe is the one who's captured, played by Gillian Sartain, who was our villain in The Patriot, our other episode that had an incredibly low IMDb rating. The Gillian Sartain in the two worst movies we've covered.
But I don't know. This is like a brain fart of a movie in terms of me. Like, I don't even know how to explain it. So they catch him, and then he sneezes or something, which they realize, oh, because we heard a sneeze earlier.
Yeah, that's the same sneeze they had earlier when they went to the meeting with Parnell, and Monroe and Polly were hiding in the kind of back room of his office, or like closet in his office or whatever. And then they heard a sneeze sound, and it's the same sneeze sound. So they know that he works for Parnell. I also love in the previous scene, the wrecking ball scene, that they just start shooting as well. And Parnell explicitly said, like, make it look like an accident. It's like, you're just shooting machine guns off in broad daylight. You know, it's definitely going to seem like an accident.
Yeah. Well, it's very common knowledge when you're putting a wrecking ball through a building, you also fire it full of machine gun bullets to help weaken the structure.
That is true. That is true. That's construction worker 101 right there.
But does does Monroe pop up again, even though he could be crucial for, getting information or anything like that?
No, he's just arrested. He's never seen again in the film. There's no scene of interrogation. There's no scene of nothing. It's just he's never seen him again in the film. That's it.
Yeah.
But like we care about other things. Like Joe is snapped with Tootie. He's had enough. He's created 10 rules for her to abide by, which she doesn't want to abide by. And then she gives him a big lecture in which she's talking about his love life again, and how you gotta, grab a special person with both hands. And like, this is so inspirational that all the neighbors come round and it's like, oh, what a wise woman. And then that ends up sinking in, and he gets back together with Gwen, is what happens, because he exactly quotes Tootie's speech to Gwen, which makes her totally fall in love with him again. And but even when he admits that, it was just recycled words from Tootie, it doesn't matter. It's all good. They're back together again.
Because Tootie sends him... That's, I think, the last time you see Tony, too, in the background. Tootie sends Gwen flowers earlier on.
So that happened slightly earlier, like, when Monroe was being detained and stuff like that. There was all these roses that were sent to Gwen that she thought was from Joe, because, like, we had been told earlier that Joe had never sent her flowers, and, this was him showing emotion at last, but turns out not so much. That it was Tootie all along, which is what leads them to draw up the rules that she has to abide by. And but they're back together now. They're back together again. This romance that we've so invested in throughout the film is finally it's got its happy ending, But there we go. And then so I know, like, I must sound like a broken record by this point in the episode, and I know this, but the sheer predictableness of things that happen in this movie, they do need noted each time that they happen, because like in a scene just not long after that, after Gwen and Joe get back together, the big boss Parnell, he is written what appears to be a suicide note that is read out to us, which seems like the worst suicide note ever. Like, if you were to write the most fakey fake suicide note ever, you would write this note. And Polly is reading it out and being like, "Oh, boss, why are you so depressed? We're going to get away with this. It's okay." And he's like, No, it's a fake suicide note. So they think I'm dead and they don't further investigate. And he's like, "Oh, okay." And then
he wrote one for him too.
Then he wrote one for Polly too. And then, so this all happens in like slow motion. So Parnell walks over to a window. So, like, in the background, there is another henchman sitting on a chair, like, looking shady. He's got black gloves on. He's in a black leather jacket. He's, like, obviously a killer. Parnell slowly walks over to an open window, and you're like, oh, so Polly's going to get shoved out a window. Okay. So he slowly walks over, and you're like, okay, so he's going to get shoved out the window. It's because he's been set up, like, because he keeps saying, like, oh, write your hand signature, write it big. Okay, so, like, this is quote unquote suicide, his quote unquote. And then he's just standing at the window and he keeps saying about, like, the big signature. You're like, okay, so Polly's going to get pushed out the window. But then Polly slowly walks over to the window, and you're like, okay, so the other guy, the henchman guy, is gonna push him out the window, and then we get him kind of looking out the window, and you're like, fuck, just push him out the window, okay? I know where the scene's going. Just push him out the goddamn window. I can't take it anymore.
Exactly. And he even leans and looks out for a couple beats too long too. It's not like.
You're like, oh my God, this punchline is not worth all this setup. This super obvious setup of, like, I know, like, when the scene started, I knew where the scene was going. And I'm just wasting time. It could have been fun if it was, like, much, much shorter, I suppose, I guess.
But then the joke is when he brings his head back in, he knocks it on the window, and then he says, ouch, that hurt, or something like that, and it's almost like a blazing, I know there's the Blazing Saddles gag, which, obviously that one works because it's Blazing Saddles. Mel Brooks directing comedy, but
that is true. Maybe should have watched something like that, like, or other, maybe learned from other good comedies,
Yeah. One of the few things you could do if you're making a comedy yourself.
Yes, just watch other good comedies, and yeah. Anyway, there's not much left of this movie. We've survived this far. We're going to make it through to the very end.
So, up next is he comes home after a night with Gwen, I guess, on his desk, and he sees that his mother is left. She's upset and says she doesn't want to ruin his life anymore, but she did leave him a pineapple upside down cake. And then, he drives to the airport.
Not a great callback to the pineapple chunks from
Yeah. He drives to the airport to get her back. And it almost plays, this airport scene is not really that necessary, like a lot of the movie, but it also plays in some of their dialogue like it should be the thing at the ending scene. I feel like, because they're talking about the rules, and they're kind of having a little banter about the rules and everything, and you watch and you go, oh, this is, kind of how it wraps up. They're bickering with each other like normal, and then that's how any sort of those buddy movies end, whatever.
Yeah.
But it's not.
It's not the end of the movie. No, because we've not captured Parnell. There's still this action to happen. There's still this criminal plot to solve. you know?
Yeah.
So, this criminal plot that we're heavily invested in because these characters have been such a big part of the movie.
Which I was even, by that point, like, well, if Parnell gets away, if they just let him get away with it, that's fine. Like, just and it's not like I really am invested if Parnell gets caught or not.
Well, he's basically not a presence in the movie. Like, basically, he's, throughout the film, I mean, by this point in the film, and we're real near the end of the film, he's been in like 3 scenes.
Yeah.
And one of those scenes, he was on the screen for literally 2 seconds to just be like, yeah, do the hit, Like,
yeah. I mean, it very much plays. Well, I know that character and all of that should come first, but this plays like the mother-son jokes that don't even land were first, and everything else kind of fell by the wayside.
Yes,
Like,
I definitely think that's true. Yeah, for 100%. But then, anyway, so it's not the end of the movie. We've clarified that. They go back to the house. Mitchell's back again, and he gets knocked out by Turi, who hits him in the head with a frying pan, and then he gives, like, we basically get a scene of some exposition, and while Joe and Mitchell drink chocolate milk and eat cookies that Turi has apparently made in 2 seconds, and then so then we kind of head off to what's going to be the final showdown, but Joe handcuffs Mitchell and Turi together because that's for her own good, and he definitely doesn't want her to get involved and meddle in any way. Is that what happens, Craig?
No, because somehow Tootie, who is either very naive, as we established, or has these skills. This shows one of the times where she has these skills because she knows how to get out of handcuffs, I guess. And she's she's putting soap on her hand to slide it out. Gets out, Mitchell, and then knocks Mitchell out again and handcuffs him again to make sure he doesn't leave. Because her son would be really upset if he escaped to Mexico. Then
he is also not seen again in the movie, so presumably he's, I don't know, still handcuffed in Joe's house, like as far as we're aware.
Yeah. And so she takes the van that's Mitchell's and drives to the same place. But she drives as Joe, parks a ways away to do surveillance and all of that. She pretty much drives right up and gets herself caught.
Immediately. She gets, there's various henchmen. She drives to the scene of this airport, the strip, the airfield, and she immediately gets kidnapped within 2 seconds of arriving.
Yeah, and then it doesn't even feel, I don't know. During it, you're supposed to have this concern that she's going, obviously, watching a movie like that, well, they're not going to kill her. But it doesn't even feel from the actors that there's too much of a threat.
That's true. That's true. There's zero jeopardy in this scene.
Yeah, which they grab her, they put her on the plane. Joe then jumps into a truck and chases down the plane. First by playing chicken with it, then by whipping around, crashing into its wheel, then into its one of the propellers.
One of the propellers.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even this scene is kind of it's probably the closest, I guess, to kind of an exciting action sequence, but again, it's just so kind of flatly directed that you're kind of thinking, this should be exciting. I should be excited by this. I'm kind of not, but I should be.
Yeah. You're chasing down a plane, you're having a propeller slice through this truck. That in theory is...
In theory, the scene just before as well, where he's playing chicken with it. It's what's going to happen? Who's going to, and then yeah, it's like this propeller like cutting up the the bonnet, and then cutting into the engine, and then he crashes off to the side, and it's just like talking about it, you're like, oh well, that's got to be exciting. However, watching it,
well, it even shows you like Tootie and Parnell and all of them in the plane too as it's getting hit or stuff like that, and they're just kind of shaking back and forth, but they never really look that panicked. They're just kind of like, oh, we got bumped by the truck or stuff like that.
Yeah, I think there's just no sense of jeopardy in anything of like. So yeah, we see them kind of losing their footing a little bit and being jostled about, but they don't look scared or anything. They just look like how you and I or anybody listening to this would look like on a plane that is suffering from turbulence, kind of slightly concerned, mildly annoyed, and that's about it.
So he's able to knock out a couple of the guys. He jumps out of the truck, kicking them and hitting them with a tire iron. And then he himself is captured too, to which then Parnell just gives this long speech. Again, he said he's going to kill them both. He's pointing the gun at them. And again, repeating ourselves, no jeopardy. You really feel it because whatever reason, you're just kind of like, oh, he's pointing a loaded gun at them. Oh, well, I'm sure everything will be fine.
Yeah, I'm sure. There's no sense of drama in this movie at all. So, like, I don't know. I'm sure something zany will happen. Oh, and it does. That's she's got a massive. We do another Dirty Harry reference. We got a massive kind of gun.
One of those like magnums or whatever.
Yeah, one of those like magnum kind of guns, and you like the one kind of thing that you do. It's one of those things where a lot of movies like this don't make a whole lot of sense. But the kind of good ones, like you don't really think about them not making a whole lot of sense while you're watching the movie. It's not until after you kind of parse it about, and you're kind of like, oh, that didn't make much sense. But it was fun watching it. But this movie, because it's not a lot of fun, you do start thinking about the logic of things, and you're like, the recoil in that thing would absolutely knock her on her ass.
Yeah, she's only like 4'10", and that thing is like a foot long, not a foot, but that's a huge gun. It would like snap up and hit her right in the face. The way she's holding it.
Oh, the way she's holding it, yeah, it would either knock her in her ass or like shatter her wrist. Like it would, like Anyway, she shoots him in the shoulder. Parnell is caught. She said, that's what moms are for, because zany hijinks again.
Yeah.
And that's nearly the end of the movie.
It's not over yet.
It's not quite over yet.
Because then another scene at the airport where, obviously, as I was mentioning earlier, you could have just saved a lot of the airport dialogue about the rules for this part, but no. Everybody's walking to take her back to the plane so she can go to.
Yeah, and by everybody we mean Joe and Gwen, the only the only characters that we semi care about.
Yeah. Oh, and Gwen now has a wedding or like a engagement ring.
Engagement ring, yeah.
Because I guess in 2 weeks' time or whatever, that was enough for them to decide to get engaged and all of that. But yeah, then so they're walking her up there, going to take her away. The rules I don't think they talk about the rules yet again, but she notices a guy that she recognized on a what was that show?
America's Most Wanted.
Yep. And which was a very popular show during that time. And Joe is just kind of brushing her off and saying, okay, just get on the plane. She starts yelling at the guy, which the guy then pulls out a gun, and Joe chases him down and captures him. And they have a little back and forth about the rules, and she adds in Rule 11 or something like that. Rule 11, always listen to your mother, or I don't remember.
Yeah. We always listen to your mother. And then, so we got to mention, yes, so we got to mention two things. So the man at the airport, who she saw on America's Most Wanted, is played in a cameo by Ernie Lively, who we have met previously in cameos in Hard to Kill, and also in a cameo in Fire Down Below. So Ernie Lively, the third appearance from Ernie Lively in cameo. So like, we'll look out for more Ernie Lively cameos as this podcast goes on, because I feel like he made cameos in a lot of 90s action movies. But yeah, and then we end the movie as she remembers what she saw him on America Most Wanted for. He shot his mother, because of course he did. And then we very much...
Stallone smiles like, oh, well, that, like, I haven't thought about that before. Wink, wink.
He gives a kind of sly half smile of like, oh yeah, understandable, shooting his mother, like, because... Yeah. And then it says freeze frame, and then credits roll, and we get more of the generically wacky score. So usually at this stage of the show, what we do is I ask Craig, or Kyle, our other co-host who didn't have to sit through this, for best and worst, and we could still do that if you want.
I mean, for me, the best will probably be, I guess, the dream scene, just because it's just so out there. I don't know, why not? I'll give it that one.
Right.
The worst. I don't know. I think the worst is just it's funny because so much of it, even I could even say the dream scene is the worst as well. It's the best and worst of the whole thing.
It's kind of, it's the most insane out there, yeah.
But the worst is just kind of so much of the generic jokes that fall flat and everything like that, where you're just, nothing really works at all because it's so predictable.
I think I'm kind of on the same boat. I think the kind of one of the best and worst things is the dream sequence, because it's just so insane, and it's just such a kind of strange image, seeing Stallone in a diaper. It's so that's kind of, it's not really funny, but it's just kind of like, well, this feels like a kind of fever dream that I'm having now, that what is going on in this movie. And like I said, that one line that Roger Rees gave, and there's not a whole lot. I think the worst thing, like you as well, is just the laziness factor of just like everything feels so very lazy and very predictable. And I've rarely seen a movie so completely devoid of comic timing. Like, the punchlines, they're just sitting there staring at you in the face, and then they are delivered some minutes later. It's just, and like I say, I don't even particularly hate this movie. Like, I can think of a bunch of comedies that I hate way more. The comedy is genuinely excruciating. The things like Jack and Jill and Epic Movie and Date Movie and Freddy Got Fingered and movies like The Love Guru, Norbit. These are movies that I hate because they're just absolutely excruciating. This film isn't excruciating like those films. Like, it's not toe-curlingly, just awful in the way that those movies are. But it's just, everything is just so flat, and, just sits there, and you're just like, the movie begins and it ends, and you're just like, well, I suppose that was a thing.
Yeah. No, I mean, I would agree with that. And I think that's kind of it's one of those hard issues because you're able, like those ones that you mentioned, the excruciating films, and I can agree with that as well, is that at some point there's at least some weird acknowledgement of like, well, at least they try. It failed miserably and it wasn't good, but I commend them for trying. I don't even know how to put it, where this is like, oh, you did it and you played, like you just took whatever, fit, I guess, with the other films in this category and pieced it together.
Yep. That is basically what they did. I will say, in terms of, kind of going back to the kind of best and worst thing, in terms of performances, I do want to credit Estelle Getty, who does try to get life out of a lifeless script. She doesn't succeed in the end, but she does try in a way that I don't think any other actor in the film tries.
Yeah. I feel like I almost wish they let her. You're talking about like the black comedy element. It seems like it would work a little bit better if they really let her be like a more unlikable character.
Yeah, for sure. But that's it. It's all over. That's our Stop or My Mom Will Shoot episode in the can. Please do tell us your thoughts about the movie. Maybe you're one of the handful of people who like this film. Who knows? But, tell us what you think. Tell us what you think we got right, what you think we got wrong. Whatever you want to tell us, please do it. Please rate, review, and subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, basically anywhere that, you stick podcasts into your ears. It just leaves me to thank my co-host for suffering through this. So thank you very much, Craig.
Thank you for having me, and I can't wait for Cliffhanger and everything else. Just anything at all.
Moving away from this film is what it's all about. Well, we get good films coming up, because next week we're going to be talking about one of Stallone's finest in the 90s, probably Rennie Harlin's best film. Yes, it is 1993's Cliffhanger. But until then, see ya.